Hi everyone, Trey and Theresa here. Thanks for tuning in. Today we'd like to share with you our story with Alzheimer's disease. Theresa was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease back in November of 2018 at the age of 49. However, our story doesn't start there. It actually starts several years prior to that, back in late 2012, early 2013, where Theresa was starting to show signs of mild cognitive impairment. However, we didn't really know what it was called back then, but Theresa was definitely starting to change. The earliest signs were basically failure to keep commitments or keep promises that she made. She would start projects and not finish them. She was starting to spend less and less time with her family and became estranged from a few of them. Our marriage started to suffer as a result of some of these changes because I was frustrated with what was going on and I couldn't figure out why these changes were taking place. She also started having trouble at work. In 2014, she was demoted. Theresa had worked as an accounting professional for nearly 20 years, and many of those years as a senior financial analyst. But suddenly she was struggling with her job, and she got demoted. A couple of years went by. In 2016, she was terminated from her job as an accountant. She was continued to struggle with the responsibilities of the job, and she always, she was working a lot of late hours. She would come home at 11, 12 o'clock at night. She always had the last car in the parking lot. She had a tremendous work ethic, but she just couldn't keep up with the complexity of the job. However, her termination occurred at a time where the company was going through a merger and a number of people were laid off. So it wasn't immediately evident to me that it was related to any sort of cognitive impairment that she might have been having. However, she was definitely struggling with the job. And after she lost the job, she became what seemed to me like depressed and had a lot of stress. She had trouble looking for a new job. She had trouble searching on LinkedIn and updating her profile. She needed a lot of help with her resume, forming complete sentences and whatnot. I was having to proofread some of her work, and that was a change because she had always proofread my documents in the past. So this is all, sort of bewildering to me, why she just seemingly couldn't get back on her feet. But I attribute it to, the stress of her losing her job. It's the first time that she had ever been fired. She took a few interviews for accounting positions, and on one particular interview she came home and told me that the interviewer asked her a question about, please describe a typical day at your old job. And Theresa told me that she just couldn't remember, what her daily tasks were at the old job, and she didn't have an answer for the interviewer. That took me back a bit. I couldn't figure out. I just attributed to she must be really stressed about having to be interviewed. She did eventually land a temporary accounting job, but she was let go after just a couple of weeks for an unexplained reason. After that setback, Theresa decided to hang up her accounting career for the time being, and she took a job as a receptionist. She worked that job for about 6 or 9 months or so, and she was let go from that job as well. After that, she took a job at a local supermarket, in 2017, and she worked that job for about a year. And during this time, we started the family and I started to see more and more signs that something might be wrong beyond just stress or depression. She was having trouble with familiar tasks like operating her cell phone. Sending a text message or finding photos became difficult for her, and I had to help her with it. She got lost driving a few times. She was having trouble with her memory and finding what words to say. So, I felt at this point it was time for her to see her doctor. And Theresa didn't want to go at first. She didn't think that she had a problem. She thought maybe she just was, she was still struggling to get back on her feet, and she didn't want to go to the doctor and talk about these problems. But through a lot of encouragement, we finally got her to go. And I sat and I spoke with the doctor and I shared, the things that I was noticing, and the family as well, what they were noticing. And the doctor pulled out a piece of paper and asked Theresa to draw a clock and make the clock say 2 o'clock. And, I witnessed in this moment that Theresa couldn't do it. I witnessed her not being able to tell time. And that was just, it was a real shocker to me, what I was seeing. I had no idea that she couldn't tell time. And come to find out, it's a very common test that doctors do to look for dementia. So at this point, I realized that Theresa must have some sort of dementia, and it wasn't just stress or depression from losing her job, but we had a more serious problem here. After that appointment with the doctor, we went home, and I tried to teach Theresa how to tell time again, and I just was unable to do that. She wasn't able to. There's quite a few steps in telling time. We kind of take it for granted, but the relationship between the long hand and the short hand, and all the tick marks between the numbers. The fact that the number 1 can mean 5 minutes past the hour or mean 1 o'clock. These are all processes that Theresa would have trouble with, and attribute to her not being able to tell time. I also learned that she was having trouble with basic math. She had forgotten her multiplication tables, and she couldn't count backwards by 5. So all these things, I had no idea about. There's not common things that you would ask. Theresa, she's young, and she doesn't look like she has Alzheimer's disease, and she can speak well. So, to most people, they would have no idea that she would have a cognitive problem unless you actually sit down and start doing some of these tests. We were referred to a neurologist after seeing her primary care doctor, and where we had several MRIs done, and Theresa was diagnosed with posterior cortical atrophy, which is a posterior variant of Alzheimer's disease. And we were pretty devastated by that diagnosis. Theresa was placed on medication for cognitive improvement, named Xeric, as well as some medications for anxiety. We went home, and we were just, we were pretty upset, and it took us. Theresa wanted to continue working. That was part of our a treatment plan. Basically, was to keep working for as long as possible, and to engage socially. So she went back to work at the grocery store. However, in March of 2019, we decided it was time for her to resign. Theresa was having trouble with some coworkers that would make fun of her. They didn't know that she had Alzheimer's disease, and they would poke fun of some of the mistakes she made on the job. I was having to set alarms for Theresa for when to leave the house to get to work, and when to punch in and out for breaks, and when to come home. We had alarms for a lot of things. Even though Theresa had a watch, a digital watch, she could, if she were to look at it and it were to say 7 o'clock, she would know that it's 7 o'clock. But if you ask her what time is it, what time will it be in 35 minutes, she wouldn't, she might not be able to add it up. So she wasn't, often to get to work on time. She might look at her clock. If she had to be working at 7 o'clock, she might not leave the house until 7. She couldn't figure out that she needed to leave, 10 or 15 minutes prior to get to work on time. She spent a lot of time out in the parking lot rounding up grocery carts, because that was a task that she could perform well, and it allowed her some freedom. It kept her away from problem coworkers, and allowed her to avoid confusion with tasks inside the store. So being outside, allowed her to keep some self-preservation. However, she had, some sad times, and we felt with all of those things added up that it was time to resign. So, I spoke to my employer, informed them of Theresa's condition, and they allowed me to work from home. I work as a network engineer, so I can pretty much work from anywhere as long as I have an internet connection. And the ability to work from home has been a tremendous blessing, because I can be with Theresa, and I can be here to support her. And she doesn't have to be alone. So I feel very fortunate for that. And since she wasn't working anymore, we went ahead and applied for disability, and very fortunately that got approved on the first attempt. So we were very happy about that. We felt that the first neurologist that we were seeing just wasn't quite aggressive enough. She was 49 years old at the time of her diagnosis, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anything. So we went to see another neurologist for a second opinion. And on that first initial visit, within first few minutes of seeing the doctor informed us that 50-year-old women just don't get Alzheimer's disease, and we were hopeful. We were hopeful that maybe the first neurologist misdiagnosed her, and our new doctor would help figure out what was causing her dementia-like symptoms. However, we went through a whole round of testing again. We went through a spinal tap, a PET scan, neuropsychological testing, and we got the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And we kind of suffered the same devastating news all over again. But once again, having a diagnosis is extremely important, because it explains, it gives a reason for all the changes that we had seen in Theresa. Through the all the doctor's appointments that we had, and applying for disability, at some point the Division of Motor Vehicles found out about Theresa's condition, and we had to go in front of a review board to talk about her condition and whether or not it was safe for her to drive. We ended up surrendering her license to avoid the process of getting all of her doctors to fill out paperwork and for her to go down and get go through the testing to make sure that she could still drive. I just felt it was it'd be better for us to surrender it, and that'd be the safest option. However, this was extremely difficult for Theresa because she was giving up her last bit of independence. Theresa would tell you that the hardest part of this, living with this disease, is realizing, being aware of what her capacities were in the past and what her limitations are right now. It's very difficult. She just would do anything to get her job back, or be able to pop in her car and go shopping at the mall on her own, or go visit her daughter. So it's one of the toughest parts of the disease, and it's very difficult for me as her caregiver to watch her go through those tough times as well. Once things settled down with all of the doctor's appointments, we started to look for ways to reach out to other folks that were affected with the disease as well. Theresa was especially interested in trying to find someone else with early onset that she could relate to and just share experiences with. So, started to look at the Alzheimer's website, which is alz.org. Started to look there for resources that were available, and found out about a fundraiser called Walk to End Alzheimer's. And we had one locally here in St. Pete, which Theresa and I attended. And, there was a lot of folks there. We didn't really meet anybody with early onset at that event, but we did find out about a support group in Sarasota for early onset. And we have been regularly attending that group now. And there are several individuals that are very close in age to Theresa. And, while it's devastating that there's other folks out there, it has been very helpful for both Theresa and I. I'm able to meet other caregivers that are close to my age as well. So we are grateful for that. We also there's an event called Rally and Tally that we attended this year, which is an event in where folks like Theresa and I are encouraged to go to our state capitol in Florida and share our story with state legislators, in the effort to bring more awareness about Alzheimer's disease, and make sure appropriate funding is there for research, so that we can hopefully find a cure for this disease. So, some of our present day challenges, something that's very personal to Theresa and I, but we want to share some of the things that are going on right now. Theresa has been stable. There hasn't been really any signs of progression as right now, but some of the things that we do have trouble with, or Theresa has trouble with, we still have trouble telling time and doing math. That comes with managing money. Following directions that have multiple steps, such as cooking and whatnot. I will be there to help Theresa. We try to cook meals together, so she can still participate in stuff like that. She also sometimes help be making decisions. If we go to a restaurant, we'll look at the menu together, and usually I will order for her because she may have trouble remembering what she picked out. Theresa has trouble spelling words. and forming complete sentences. She also has some trouble with reading. We have to take it slow. She may have trouble. She can still, dress herself and bathe and such things like that. But she may put her clothes on backwards sometimes. But she usually catches it herself and makes the correction. She may forget where she places items, or might forget what an object is called. And drawing shapes. She has trouble drawing shapes. If I were to draw a square or a square and a circle on a piece of paper and ask her to copy it, she'll have trouble copying that shape. So, Alzheimer's is not just an older person's disease, and it affects a lot more than just memory. As we look towards the future, we have a plan. We're continuing to take medication for cognitive improvement, which Theresa is taking Nemzuric. Takes medication for anxiety, which is Zoloft. Takes a number of supplements for a healthy body in general. It's very much encouraged to have a healthy lifestyle. So we try to follow a Mediterranean type of diet, which consists of fresh fruits, vegetables, healthy fats like nuts, seeds, avocados. We mostly follow a vegetarian type diet, but we do add some fish as well, and salmon and whatnot to it. We exercise every day. We try to walk, do a fast walk for about 5 miles every day. Some days it's at the park, some days it's at the beach. We go for bike rides, so we try to stay active. We stay engaged with our support group, and we also stay engaged mentally by try to do some brain games, crossword puzzles, reading. So to wrap things up here on this video, we want to thank you for tuning in. We hope that Theresa's story can reach someone out there who could benefit from an early detection. I believe that if anything seems amiss with your loved one or yourself, to please get checked out by your doctor for a dementia screening. Myself and the family spent a lot of years in bewilderment to the changes that we were seeing in Theresa, and a diagnosis made a huge difference for us. It gave me a reason to the changes that I was seeing, and I believe it probably saved her marriage. It meant that much to us. I want to encourage anybody out there to learn more about Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of resources on the Alzheimer's organization's website, which is alz.org, where you can learn about the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. There's information about support groups in your area, fundraisers you could attend. So please do check that website out and learn what you can about Alzheimer's disease. Thank you for tuning in today. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for our next video.